Welcome to another 10 to 20 with Tanya. I'm teacher Tanya. I see a few people already joining us. Thank you for coming on live for a story class today. I'm starting a new series about where things started in American culture. And today we're going to talk about the word okay. Where did this word come from? Why do Americans say okay so often? And what's up with the myth and mystery around this word? So, if you're joining me live today, even if you're joining me on the recorded version, let me know where you're listening from and where you live now, what your native language is. I see a few people here, so I will look for what you have to say in the comments. And what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. There's an idiom for you. I lost my train of thought, meaning I was just getting ready to say something and I totally forgot. Or you could say, I had a brain pause. I had a brain pause, which is common for me these days. I'm not sure why. But let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I know what I was going to say. When you have a question, be sure to put your question in the comments, especially if you're listening live, because then I can answer your question live, just like if you were here with me in class. But even if you're listening to the recording, go ahead and put your question in the comments. I try to get to as many of the comments that I can. All right, I see we have a couple of people starting to comment. So let's get started. So I first got the idea to talk about this word okay when I was reading a book recently called Confronting the Presidents. Confronting the Presidents. And this book is by an author who writes, I think, primarily political, kind of, not necessarily political, maybe political history. I haven't read a lot of his books, but I was reading this one where he would kind of reveal some of the things we don't know so much about our American presidents. And it is a super interesting book, not only on that topic, but getting a history of the United States kind of quickly, like going through all of the historical events and how they tie to the presidents and some of the things we may not have known about the presidents. So if you know me, you know that I love studying the presidents. I was in a book club for a few years in Southern California where we read anything. Everybody chose their own book on each of the presidents. We went through all of the presidents until the most recent president. We didn't go through the most recent president, but we did all of the presidents up until then. And it was super interesting, very, very interesting. I listened to a podcast that I would recommend if you'd like to know a little more about American history. The podcast is called Presidential. I've put it there in the live chat, and it's done by the Washington Post. It's interesting and fun, and so if you like to listen to podcasts, I recommend that. All right, I see some of our regulars. Hi, Rennie, great to see you. We've got Brazil, Venezuela, Mexico, Russia. So far, Belarus, close to Russia. So far, we've got a little Eastern Europe and some South America. Are you listening from North America or Africa or Europe? We see if we can represent those continents here on the live today. So let's get into the story. I told you a little bit about why I chose this topic today. And let's talk a little bit about why this word is used so often by Americans. Why do we say this word all the time? And what you may not be aware of is that it has lots of different meanings. So even myself, when I think of the word okay, I think it is meaning everything is all right, everything is good. But we can also use it to agree, like, okay, I'll do that, or to check understanding, like, okay, with a question, like, okay, or is it okay? That kind of thing. And we can even use it to as like a transition word to begin a new topic. Okay, let's begin with blah, 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 that kind of thing. So I'm going to tell you more about that. And this reminds me that if you are not currently a part of my free club, it's my free More English Club. This club does not cost anything, and you get a lot of great information in your email and all of the old vocabulary lists as well. You get more than 20 vocabulary lists in the free More English Club. And for the list or the help sheet I'm going to make for this video, I'm going to give you some of the meanings that we're not going to talk about during the live today because we can't get everything into 20 minutes or so. So if you want to join the free More English Club, the link is already in the description to this video, and you will right away receive kind of a bonus vocabulary email from me, and then you'll get access to all of that vocabulary and the tips and tricks that I share with you whenever I tell a story here on YouTube. So how did this word start? It can be used for lots of things. That's why it is something we use so much. But how did the word start? And tell me while I'm talking about how did this word start, do you use the word okay in your native language? Do people in your native country use this word even though they're speaking Spanish or Russian or Portuguese? What are some of the people we've got here? Peru. Do you use the word okay? I bet you do, because it's spoken in almost every language in the world. It's as popular a word as the word Coca-Cola. Everyone knows the word okay, but let me know, do you use this word in your native language? You can just write yes or no in the comments there for me. And I will tell you that it started back in the fairly early 1800s, or we could say the 19th century. And there are, of course, more than one story. There is more than one story, I should say, about how this word got started. I first started hearing about kind of the etymology or the beginnings of this word through this book that I mentioned to you, Confronting the Presidents. And this author, Bill O'Reilly, said that the word was started by one of our presidents, Andrew Jackson. Have you heard of Andrew Jackson? Now I've put two questions out there. Yes, we use okay, or yes, I know Andrew Jackson. Let me know in the comments. Okay, I see a few people already saying yes, we use this word in our country. And in this book that I was reading, it said that Andrew Jackson was a poor speller. We could say he was a bad speller. He was a poor speller. If you see me looking down, I'm taking notes of words or phrases I might want to teach you in that free club I mentioned. Poor speller, or remind you so that you can review some of these words. And he wanted to write all correct when he would get a document, that it was all correct. It said what he wanted to say. And instead, he would write it, he would spell it incorrectly with an O and a K instead of an A and a C, which I put in the comments here. He wrote all correct incorrectly. He was a bad speller. Now, what I think is really interesting about this is sometimes people think of the President of the United States as one of the most powerful people in the world, one of the most successful people in the world. And here's this guy that is Andrew Jackson is a president we all know in the United States, and he couldn't spell. So it's not just you, it's not just me. There are many people who have difficulty spelling in English because spelling in English is not like Spanish, which is much more easy. It's more easy to spell in Spanish because it's what we would call a phonetic language. Ah, one person asks spell question mark. Is your question what do I mean by spell, or is that how you spell the word spell? So yes, we say spell, S-P-E-L-L. I'd love to know what your question is. If you could write a little bit more so that I know what your question is. And I'm love to know from anyone else the questions you have as I'm telling this story about the word. So this is one thought on how it started. Andrew Jackson couldn't spell. It means he didn't know how to write the words with the correct letters. How could that be? President of the United States. Now, I did find out that that part is true. It is true that he was a poor speller. And in fact, I have a quote here from him that I love. He said, "It's a damn poor mind that can think of only one way to spell a word." I love it that he said that. Basically, he's saying, be creative with the way you write it. And what can we learn from Andrew Jackson as language learners? We can learn that it is it is okay if you're not perfect. If you can, of course, we want to strive for excellence. I agree totally with striving for excellence. Let me put that in here. To strive for excellence means to work towards being the best you can be. Work towards doing the best that you can. But perfection, it's not even real. Perfection is some, I mean, we could have a long talk about perfection, and I do talk about perfectionism quite a bit and how it stops our fluency. But I think what Andrew Jackson is teaching us is stop trying to be perfect. Here he is, the President of the United States, and he can't spell. Spelling is a correct writing. Yes. So spelling is being able to write the words with the correct letters in the correct order. So all correct should be spelled like this in the comments, and Andrew Jackson would spell it like this, which we would say is incorrect. And the funny thing is that he's writing all correct. So to say it in a shorter way, he started putting okay, the way that he spelled it, okay. The correct way would have been AC, which, by the way, is an abbreviation or a short way that we say, that we write air conditioning, AC. Okay, he said, meant all correct. And what's funny about that is that's not correct. But I did some research in a couple of places. You may know that I love to use ChatGPT, but not as an end all be all. End all be all. Meaning, I love to start with ChatGPT, but that's not the last thing I look at. It's not my end all be all. Um, I start there, and then I check what I learn. And ChatGPT said this word did not start with Andrew Jackson. It started in a Boston newspaper. So who's correct? ChatGPT or the author of this book, this human author of lots of published books? My original thought was it must be this human author who has done a lot of research and is very famous for the books that he writes. You can look up Bill O'Reilly if you want to. I think that's an interesting thing to do too. So I did that. And he's very reputable. Reputable, meaning he has a lot of books uh, published. He's known to write things that are correct. But the other thing is, what's correct? AI or humans? At this time, at this point in history, they're probably both have some things that are not correct. But AI, for me, I use GPT, said that this started with as a joke in 1830. Here you can practice listening to your numbers. 1830 by a Boston newspaper that, as a joke, wrote all correct, the way Bill O'Reilly said Andrew Jackson did. And for me, what I would say now, doing some research about it, I should say, doing some research about it, was it this newspaper in 1830 that I learned about with AI, or was it one of our presidents in the 1800s, the early 1800s, that I learned about from a human that wrote a book more recently? And what I found is that Andrew Jackson was our president between 1829 and 1837. And this newspaper wrote it in 1830. So I'm going to say that again because as a language learner, I know those dates. When native speakers spit out those dates, in other words, when they say it really quickly, they spit out those dates. I'm like, what? So let me say that again. The newspaper wrote about it in 1830. Andrew Jackson was our president from 1829, 1 year before 1830, to 1837. So if I think about this, and this is what I really encourage you to do, is think about it yourself. Get the information you can. Look for reputable sources, meaning look for websites, people, books that you think you can trust them. You've heard of them, you know that lots of people say these are true, then it's hard to say what's reputable these days, but that's probably something you can trust. And then look at the information. Another thing you can do is go to ChatGPT and ask for its resources. Where is it getting this information? I love this about ChatGPT. You couldn't do this before. And when I did this, ChatGPT mentioned resources about this information from the history website, history.com. This is a reputable source. The Smithsonian, also a reputable source in the United States, and Merriam-Webster Dictionary, also a reputable source, and the source that I really like to use for a dictionary. Now, I didn't go all out. Here's another phrase for you. I didn't go all out and spend a lot of time researching this because I have a limited amount of time. But I would have to go look and see what Bill O'Reilly's sources were for this book. Where did he get his information? And then I could make an even better decision. It's not life or death, right? Where did the word okay come from? It's not life or death. So I'm probably not going to spend too much time on this, but it is super interesting. And when things like this are interesting, this is a great way to learn because the more interesting it is, the more likely your brain is going to remember it. Okay, so what else? Why did this or how did this word spread? Well, back in the 1830s, people communicated a lot with a telegraph. A telegraph is that little machine that goes. My kids would make fun of me for making this sound. And the shorter the word, the better. So okay is much shorter than all correct. And so it's spread all over the world in this way. I do want to give you some quick tips on how you can use this and things to watch out for, things to be careful about. But let me look at my comments here. Manuel says, "Good morning from Tenerife, the islands off the coast of Africa, which are owned by Spain, I believe. It's great to have you here." Manuel put an example of the telegraph. Thank you, Manuel. What questions do you have about the phrases I have shared with you today to spit out words, a poor speller, end all be all, a brain pause? One I didn't say, tidbits. I love to learn little tidbits like this. Let me put that word, tidbits. I love to learn little tidbits of history. It's one of my favorite things to do as a pastime or a hobby. And I'm curious, what's one of your hobbies? What are some of the things you love to do when you're learning a language or for your pastime, your hobby? I can get to know you better because I have you here with me live, which I love having. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I'll give you one more minute, a minute or so, while I tell you some things to think about when you're using the word okay. First of all, there's a million, not literally. There are a lot of ways to use this word. So I will share some of those with the Free More English Club people, which the link is in the description if you didn't hear me talk about that. And some things to think about are the way you say it. So you can sound positive or negative with this word just by the tone of your voice, like okay or okay means two totally different things. And it is an informal word, but we use it everywhere. We even use it in formal settings. Of course, if you're being really, really formal, there are other ways and other words to use, which I'll share with you. But I want to know what do you want me to talk about next in this series? I have two different ideas of things that I could talk about next. One is, where does the American hot dog and hamburger come from? And why do the other, hot dogs and hamburgers, the other is, why do school buses in the United States look the way they do? Where did that come from? So this whole story, this whole series of lives is about where things came from in American culture. So let me know, which one do you want me to talk about next? Hot dogs and hamburgers or school buses? Let me know in the comments. And Manuel says, I'm not properly don't have a sweet tooth. Is that what you meant to say? And uh, if you haven't had a chance to put your answers in the comments live, I hope you will go over to the recording as soon as this posts, and especially let me know which one you want me to talk about first. Uh, Manuel says, just a moment, just in case I tell you, okay, every now and then could be put in jeopardy. It could jeopardize the word agree. It's true. It definitely could. Okay is definitely used to use as agreement. Deanna, it's great to see you. I don't remember which one was number 2. School bus? Tell me either hamburgers and hot dogs or school bus. So I see we have one vote for hamburgers and hot dogs. And I will take the votes from this live, but I also will take the votes from the recording. And remember, if you missed part, you can see the recording, and you can also go back there to listen to the words and phrases that I used during this story. Deanna and I were just talking in class, or actually she was talking to one of the other students about how important repetition is. And that is so true. School bus, we got one vote for each. So we'll take a look um, at the comments when this is put in the recording. And I am so grateful you all joined me here today. I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.